Hey everyone, today what we're going to be talking about are segments and angles. Today is a lot of vocabulary, so go ahead and make sure you copy down what I have on my notes. So let's get started with some of the vocab. So first off, we have segment addition theorem. And for this one, the length of the line segment is equal to the sum of the lengths of its smaller segments. So let me highlight that for you. So the length of the line segment is equal to the sum of the lengths of the smaller segments. So here we've got PN, which is this section right here. That is, and then you have NQ, which is right here. Well, all of that will equal PQ, which is this total amount here. So all it's saying is the smaller and the larger equal the whole length of the segment. All right, next up is midpoint. So when you see midpoint, that means it's between in the middle. So midpoint of a segment, if M is between P and Q and PM is congruent to QM, then M is the midpoint. So if you were to look at this, PM is 3, MQ is also 3, so 3 plus 3, so since they're both even, or both equal, 3 plus 3 equals 6, so that means that this point right here, M is the midpoint, because 6 is 3 plus 3, so 6 is the midpoint. All right, next up, segment bisector. So when you have a bisector, that means you're going to divide something into two. So if CD, which is your green line right here, intersects AB at point M, and AM is congruent to BM, then CD is a segment bisector. So that's a fancy way of saying this line is congruent to this line, so therefore CD intersected in the middle. So it divides a segment into two congruent parts. Next up, you have angle addition theorem. And this is just that, where all you're doing is adding the two angles together to get the total larger angle. So it says the sum of the two adjacent angles. So adjacent means, and I'll scooch that over for you. There you go. The two adjacent angle measures will be equal to the measure of the larger angle they form. So in this case, JKN, which is right here, and LKN is equal to the whole thing of JKL. So that's it. It's just the two smaller angles together make the big angle. And if you notice right here, notice they share this side. That's the part where it is adjacent. All right, next up, angle bisector. Again, that bisector means you're dividing it into two. So if JKL is the vertex, so K is the vertex, that's the middle. If KM goes through the vertex and angle JKM is congruent to angle LKM, then KM is an angle bisector. So what this is saying, if this angle is congruent to this angle, then that means that this is the bisector. So it means it cut them in half. Next up, vertical angles. Vertical angles says that when two lines or segments intersect at one point, so this would be the point right here, two pairs of opposite and congruent angles are formed. They're called vertical. So how we can think of this is angle 1 is congruent to angle 3 because they're opposite this vertex right here. And then angles 2 and 4 are congruent because they're opposite that point right there. And make sure you get those examples written down. All right, next up, linear pair. So adjacent, again, there's that word adjacent. Adjacent means that they share this side right here. So if adjacent angles A and B form a straight line, so those two together form this line, they form a linear pair. So when you see linear, you see the word line, so it forms a straight line. And remember, straight lines are 180 degrees. So angle A plus angle B equals 180 degrees, which is this whole line. All right, complementary angles, it's two angles that up to equal 90 degrees. So this whole thing is 90 degrees, and you were able to get that through 60 plus 30. And they can share a side, so they can be adjacent, meaning they share a side, or they can be separate. So these are separate. They have, so this is 30 and this one's 60. But as long as they equal 90 degrees, that's fine. Or that's a complementary angle. And then last but not least is supplementary, two angles that add up to 180 degrees. So if you were to have 180 degrees, that's right here. And you can have your two, I'll keep the same colors. So this is 72 plus 108. Those two angles add up to be 180 degrees, and they can be adjacent, meaning that they share a side. So this would be the adjacent right there. That's the side they share, or they can be separate. So they do not have to share a common side. So 72 plus 108 equals 180. So that means they're supplementary. So today was just a bunch of vocabulary, and we're going to be practicing these. So make sure you understand these words for segments and angles.